She stood atop a hill, watching Crow and the woman in black. Her armor was still stained a fresh red, a reminder of her actions. "Sir?" she began, clutching her pistol tightly. "Sable is still alive. Should I extract her?" There was a pause. "No. If she's still alive, she's much too far gone. Putting her down would be showing mercy." "But, sir—" "Commander," the female on the other end belted out, "I gave you orders. It would be better for you to follow them without further question." The woman shook where she stood, giving a nod. "Yes, sir. Sorry, sir." She clicked the radio off. Esmeralda out. Sable, Episode 10, A Clean Slate. The cave seemed to go on forever, an eternal sea of darkness and rocks no matter where you looked. If one were to ask Crow how long it had been down here, it wouldn't have had an answer for you. So maybe a couple hours? What if it had been days? Crow was rarely ever tired, and when one mixed that with the lack of time, it could lead to plenty of confusion. Crow decided to keep a straight path, never diverging should the way split in multiple directions. Why? It didn't know. There was just a feeling, like something was pulling the giant along by the hand. It was hoping for the way to widen out at some point, the walls seeming to close on all sides. With all the silence, it gave Crow time to reflect. Memories that still couldn't believe were its own kept racing through its mind. Feelings of love, loss, and anger surged through the giant with every step. Could it have been sure that these memories truly belonged to it? Had it been a young woman before? One filled with such hope and a sense of justice? Was it really tortured by its captors on this strange land? Pain surged through its body, memories in their own right, reminding the beast that yes, it had been maimed before, in another time, when it was something else. Something pure, something innocent. "Bastards," it grumbled, slamming its fist into a nearby wall. Rocks crumbled onto the ground, finally filling the cave with another sound that wasn't Crow's steps. Sable used to believe in justice, used to believe in the greater good. She was a soldier, doing what she felt was right, and those that sent her here did nothing as her life, her dreams, her memories were taken from her. They laughed and mocked her as they watched, vile perverts just looking for an excuse to howl at spilt blood. Crow wished it could see the look on their faces as everything they knew crumbled around them. It wanted to see Esmeralda and Joe, praying to impotent gods as they met their ends. Crow paused as it noticed the ever-present walls suddenly disappearing. It was no longer lost in a sea of black, for torches were lit all around the giant, basking it in their glow. Crow had arrived in some sort of chamber, though for what, it couldn't say. There were no markings, no signs, just torches. Though it was apparently alone, Crow was still on pins and needles. Any and all noises, no matter how slight, seemed to intensify. Was its heart beating, or were there war drums off in the distance, warning the giant of impending doom? Could there have been laughter to its right? Or was it blood-curdling screams? Whispers filled its body as it stopped moving, standing in the center. They were angry, though what they were saying was unknown. "You're not supposed to be here," a meek voice called behind Crow. Every word met with a tremble from the one speaking. Crow's heart sank deep below its stomach as the words pressed against its ears. It knew that voice, though it wished over and over that it could forget. "We're not supposed to be here." Though the giant didn't have to turn to see who was addressing it, curiosity burned through Crow. It had to be sure. As it turned, the vision of a small woman with raven black hair filled its eyes. Sable. Before any of the pain, the loss, it was Sable. just as Crow remembered her. She looked so nervous, so frightened. Was she afraid of what she'd become? Was it sinking in that Crow was her future? Her only future? "How are you here?" The words just spilled from Crow, its knees growing weak. I was... you." This was a trick of some sort, and yet it felt so real. Sable looked this way and that, lips still trembling as she tried to think of what to say next. She kept looking over towards her right. Why? "It's not safe here. Not for me, and certainly not for you." There was a scuffle coming from where Sable kept gazing. Feet? "Forget what the lady in black told you. This is a very, very bad idea." Crow was on the ground at this point, breathing hard. What's in here?" "You don't remember?" Sable almost seemed disgusted, which struck Crow like a sharp knife. "How could you not remember? How? Did you really lose so much of yourself? Of us? You're pathetic. Just a helpless dog without a home." The scuffles became louder and multiplied. Something was running towards them. "How could you let me turn into you? I wish they fucking killed us. At least I wouldn't have to live like this." A pole was shoved through the back of Sable's head in an instant. Blood erupted from the wound, the girl falling to the ground as if she was weighed down with bricks and stone. No words could escape Crow's mouth, just whimpers and gasps as she watched herself fall to the ground, dead. The sound of steps surrounding her like torches were drawing closer. "God, couldn't wait for that bitch to shut up." A gloved hand gripped the end of the pole, a foot keeping Sable's head down as the figure pulled back, the pole escaping the wound with a scratching squeal that echoed through the cavern. "Glad we broke your teeth when we got the chance. Kept you nice and quiet, didn't it?" The metal pole was slammed against the ground with such force that it broke clean in two. "I asked you a fucking question, dog. You better get all good and proper and answer." "Think you scared the poor thing, Elder Maxon." "I bet it shat itself. How did it even manage to live this long? What a sniveling waste of space, if you ask me." What stood before Crow were the elders that were responsible for its transformation. Between them all was their leader, Elder Maxim, the one that finished Crow's change, turned into a mindless puppet for centuries. He wore the same crooked smile he did as he slammed the blade into Sable's head so many years ago, turning her into the giant that sat before them. It wanted to rip the man to pieces slowly, making his compatriots watch, but for the life of it, Crow couldn't move. "I'm not gonna ask again, dog," Elder Maxon growled out as he stood before Crow, placing his broken end of the pole underneath its neck. "I hate repeating myself. You know that." He smacked the giant over the head, sending Crow reeling. "At least, you should remember that. I thought I did my best in keeping you in place." Another swipe at its head, the bone mask beginning to crack, blood oozing from the new wounds. "And I've always been fair to you." Another whack, chips of bone falling before Crow's eyes. "Always did my best to show you I care." He turned on his heel, walking away from Crow. "And then you do something like this." Like a whip, he spun around, bringing the jagged pole down upon Crow's face, shattering the bone mask that had been grafted to her for so long. The pain was indescribable as fresh air slapped its burned, scarred face. "You come here to ruin my plans, my dynasty. I ruled these forests, not that vile woman who led you astray, gave you memories I intentionally kept from you because I care." With each last word, he began slapping the rest of Crow's body, racking it in broken bones and bruises. Once or twice, he jabbed the broken end into flesh, making the giant howl where it sat. Blood pooled around them, and all the other elders did was point and laugh as Elder Maxon beat Crow into submission. The world was growing dark, and for a moment, the pain had been wiped away. Crow was finally at peace as it heard the last blows to its broken face, watching chunks of teeth and gums falling before it. Crow! Crow! Something shook at Crow's body, sending the giant straight up on its knees. Where was it? The pain, the broken bones, it was all gone. The room it sat in wasn't a cave, it was a brightly lit room filled with furniture. Moments passed before Crow looked down at its body and shrieked. It was different. The giant was no longer tall, nor was it covered in feathers. Its face felt normal, feminine, and it could feel hair pressing against its shoulders. It was dressed in a white coat, a suit and a tie underneath. Its eyes moved up to the one that pulled it back from the darkness. Another woman, trying her best to smile despite the sudden reaction from Crow. "Danielle?" Crow found itself calling out, its voice so very different. It was so soft. "Did I fall asleep again? I'm so sorry." The other woman came over to Crow, pulling it into an embrace that felt so real, so warm. Danielle shook her red hair about as she held Crow so very tight. "No need to apologize, my love. These last few days have been troubling for everyone." She pulled back, looking over Crow's form. "I heard you screaming and I just had to check up on you." There was a kiss, her lips tasting like rose petals, and there was a moment where Crow wished it would never end. "I have to get back down to the lab. Final preparations are starting and they need me." Crow began to step forward, Danielle stopping her. "You stay here. You look terrible. I'll get you when everything's ready. We can watch this together. One last time." The words felt so heavy on Crow, sending it back down onto the couch it must have been sitting on. The last time? What did that mean? "Boggs. Dr. Boggs. You are needed on floor 1 now," a voice on the intercom cried out. Danielle just rolled her eyes and headed towards the door, giving Crow a smile. "I love you, Sable. I'm glad knowing it'll all end in your arms, in your kisses." Tears streamed down her face. Sorry. I've got work to do." The door slid open, a creature standing on the other side to greet them. It was gigantic, bigger than Crow had ever been, and its body was made of a white burlap, shreds of it dangling all over its lithe body. Danielle screamed, and as Crow reached for the gun in her nightstand, the beast moved like lightning. It gripped both of Danielle's arms and ripped them clean off, jabbing the broken bones into Danielle's eyes, her lifeless body twitching like it was hit by electricity as it fell. The beast crept inside the room, edging closer and closer to Crow. Silence filled the room again, and everything went black. Wet, crunching sounds filled its ears as it was eaten alive by this horrible demon. There was no trace of its form as it was torn to pieces. No blood, no skin, no bone. Come on. Crow awoke to the sensation of being carried, the light jumps and jostles causing quite the headache. It was back in the cave again, rocks filling her sights once more. Its body was the same elongated form covered in feathers, though whatever bruises and broken bones it thought it had was clearly a dream of some sort. It looked down eventually to see just who was carrying it, surprised at what it saw. Daniel Boggs was beneath the giant, using unheard-of strength to carry it on his back. He was completely nude, though his body was covered in what looked like markings made in blood. Were they towers? Crow wasn't sure, nor did it think it was appropriate to ask right now. It was just happy to be back in the waking world again. "Next time, don't pass out like that, okay?" Boggs asked, only slightly joking as he kept pushing forward. "You're lucky I was down here. I hope you know that. Did the lady in black send you down here too?" Crow nodded. Good. That'll make everything easier. I found a door down here, but I can't seem to figure out how to open it. Maybe you do." He grunted. "I'm hoping you do anyway." Crow couldn't really decipher what Boggs was trying to say. A door? Crow didn't know anything about a door. Why was he speaking so fast? Like every word could be his last. I don't know, Boggs. I don't know much of anything right now." Boggs gave a nod. "He gave you visions, didn't he? He who rules over the lady in black?" He didn't wait for a response. When we were in the forest, he showed me so much. Showed me the truth. When it first started, I didn't really know what to make of it. There were so many flashing images, so many memories that weren't my own, and yet they felt like they were. I had lived millions of lives in mere seconds, and then I saw it. My master's home. The spire. He turned his head ever so slightly to look up at Crow. We can bring the spire here, Crow. We can make a new world. A better world. One that's not filled with demons and monsters and magic. The rocky floor seemed to give way to something else. We can make you normal, Crow. Bring you back to what you used to be. I'm sure Master will grant you that at least. Who exactly is your master, Boggs? Crow asked, each word filled with growing unease. Daniel paused for a moment in thought, biting his lip. Null. His name is Null, and he is just. Steam bellowed out from somewhere behind them, lights blinking on and off on all sides. He wants justice for all. He wants to free us from the shackles of the devil and his minions. And the way lies right here. He stopped, helping Crow stand on its own 2 feet. What stood before them was a door made of metal, etchings of great battles carved into the material. There were no handles, no knobs. Crow stared at it for minutes, its mouth hanging wide open. Though it couldn't remember where, it had seen this door before. Maybe not this exact one, but it had seen one just like this. But where? It took a few steps towards the towering door, hands outstretched. As palms pressed against the door, a light filled the room, the door glowing in greens and blues. Access granted, a voice called out, echoing down the path. Welcome, Sable Artrades. A rumbling filled the air, shaking them and the rock walls to the very core. Screeches followed as the door slid open before them, basking the cave in bright, white lights that were practically blinding. It took moments before the light dulled, letting Crow and Daniel actually see what was before them, though none found it easy to comprehend what they looked upon. It was a room made of white tiles and wires, screens displaying millions of images on either side. There seemed to be another door down this sterile white room, though it was much smaller than the first. What was this place? They both started taking steps inside. They would find the answers here, whatever they might be. Crow was finally going to get her revenge on those that had wronged her. It was just a few steps away. Boggs stopped dead in his tracks as his feet pressed against the tiled ground. Crow looked behind, though the mage just answered with a shrug. It seemed like he couldn't move, his feet practically glued to the floor. Crow could move just fine, turning on its heels to start heading towards Boggs. Perhaps the giant could give him a hand? Bam! Blood splattered all over Crow's feathers and mask. Boggs' blood. The older man stood with a gaping hole where his face should have been, the entire wound already singed and steaming. Crow couldn't reach him as he fell to the ground in a heap, lifeless. Crow screamed, kneeling down to hold the corpse in its hands, looking out of the room to see who was responsible for this. They were so close. They were so fucking close. I'm sorry, Sable, a voice called out from the darkness. A female? Steps headed towards the giant, loud metallic thunks filling its ears with each passing second, almost drowning out its own heartbeat. It wasn't long before the murderer emerged from the shadows, clad in armor that was stained and dried, caked-on blood. The armor was smooth, silver despite the blotches of red, and the helmet looked to be a sheer pane of black glass, the material seemingly impenetrable by light. There was a name engraved on the armor, Crow having to squint to read what it said. Esmeralda. No, it couldn't have been her. Esmeralda stepped towards the giant, extending her armored hand out for Crow to grab on. I'm not here to hurt you, Sable. I'm here to help you, to get you back home. Crow never reached for her hand. Come on, we can fix you. We can give you your old body back, or we can even get you a better one." Her voice was growing desperate, like she didn't have much time. There was a click from her helmet, followed by static. A radio? "Please, Joe and I have been so worried about you. We never thought we'd see you again. Please, enough with this. Enough with the pain. Enough with these people." She pointed at Boggs' corpse. "It's time to come home, Sable. Back to the people who love you."
"Love me?"
Crow stood in almost an instant, swiping the offered hand away from her.
"Love me?"
It was now towering over Esmeralda, looking down at her with a snarl.
"You call watching me suffer? Watching me change into this? Loving me?"
Esmeralda blinked. "Sable, what are you talking about?" A fist was her only answer, the force crushing her helmet and shattering the glass. She stumbled back, gripping at her freshly cut face, blood pouring from between her gloved fingers. She couldn't react fast enough. Another swing coming in, sending her flying into a nearby wall, rocks crushing into her from the side and from above. Her body went limp as she landed hard on the ground.
"Sable, please, I don't know what you're talking about. Joe and I would never do that. We were worried sick. We thought you had died, and here you are."
Crow moved before her, looking down with 4 red eyes.
"Please, they told me to kill you, but I just can't. I love you so much. Joe loves you so much. Let me take you home. Let me make you better, Sable."
Crow bent down, grabbing for the largest boulder it could find and lifting it with the greatest of ease. It slowly moved to hover over Esmeralda's left hand, getting down onto its knees before her. Crow remembered that Esmeralda's dominant hand was her left. How had it remembered that? Without a word towards Esmeralda's sniveling cries, Crow lifted the boulder over its head and brought it down hard on the gloved hand, rejoicing as the sound of crunching bones filled its ears, followed by the woman's blood-curdling screams. She shook underneath Crow, trying to kick her way out of it, but Crow would not move an inch. It just lifted its boulder again, slamming it back down onto the already broken hand. Now bones were jutting out from the bloody glove. It still wasn't done, lifting the boulder for a 3rd time. "Couldn't do one thing right, could you?" a voice called out from inside the remains of Esmeralda's helmet. The woman and the giant both paused in place as the 3rd female voice continued. "I thought I made it clear that I wanted Sable Artrades dead." Crow was soon sent flying through the air as Esmeralda's right hand rocketed towards its side, removing it from her body. Esmeralda gasped and shook her head as the hand moved towards the ground, lifting her up from where she laid. Her left arm had gone limp, the torn hand dangling carelessly with each move. It wasn't hard to see that whatever her body was doing, Esmeralda wasn't in charge of it. The woman looking shocked as her body moved towards the downed giant.
Please give me more time,"
she began crying out, her good hand gripping a horn on the side of Crow's head.
"I can convince her. I can—"
"Shut up." Esmeralda's hand snapped off the horn in a clean motion that filled the room with screams from the giant. The horn twirled about in her hand before being sent down, acting like a knife as it pushed through feathers and flesh to begin impaling Crow. She kept pulling the horn in and out of Crow's chest. "You know the rules. No questioning orders. I warned you." She snapped off the second horn, shoving it into Crow's stomach, moving it up to create a gash, organs spilling out onto the ground. "You're lucky I gave you that warning, and what did you do?" Crow was kicking about, but to no avail. Esmeralda's foot pressed on the giant's left leg, using every bit of strength in her body to crush the bones in its knee, the sound making her want to vomit. "You fucked it up. You let your emotions get the better of you." She did the same thing to Crow's other leg, the kicking finally stopping. "I was gonna let you make it quick, painless." Esmeralda was crying at this point as her good hand gripped the top of Crow's bone mask, creating cracks underneath her palm. "Now I'm gonna make you watch the damn thing suffer." Many minutes passed as Esmeralda sat atop Crow, her hand moving back and forth to deliver punches that would cave in the face of any normal human. She wailed, doing her best to try and stop the motion, but it was no use. Her hand would raise high in the air before slamming back down on the pile of mush and bone that was Crow's face. The body had stopped moving forever ago, the breath having vanished earlier than that. At one point, Esmeralda stopped fighting the control being taken from her. She just closed her eyes as wet, squelching sounds filled her ears, never able to fully drown out the screams and cries Sable made. There was one moment in all of this where she looked at Esmeralda with sadness and horror. She had believed for the longest time that her lovers had sent her here to die, and Esmeralda unwillingly allowed that very event to occur. How would she be able to live with herself after this? How would Joe be able to look at her again? You killed our lover. You're a murderer. Eventually the punching stopped, her hand drowning in the blood and gore before her. Get up. She didn't fight it as her legs moved on their own, turning her towards the tiled room. She began walking, the cold, calculating voice whispering in her ear, though the words had never quite hit home. She was lost. She was gone. She had died right there with Sable. It's just that her body hadn't stopped moving just yet. She opened the second door, hissing echoing throughout, and she stepped inside the new opening. She couldn't even feel the pain in her hand anymore, her whole left arm having gone completely numb. You'll check on the integrity of the Sentinel, and then, and only then, are you allowed to report home. She stood behind what looked like a giant metal throne, a figure sitting upon it, facing an endless sea of screens that depicted millions of images from around the world. Unless, the voice changed, deeper, more masculine. Esmeralda's heart stopped. You'd rather watch the end with me. All the screens were drowned in static for moments before they all turned to a singular image. He was a tall man dressed in a Victorian suit that looked riddled with dust and blood. Behind him sat a giant of a figure, all gray and strapped to wires that connected it to a throne. A sentinel, just like the one sitting in front of Esmeralda. The man himself looked about before spotting her, a crooked smile of perfectly white teeth greeting her stunned expression. Neat little trick, huh? He called out, his voice as smooth as silk with venom dripping from it. You see, with more of these bastards gone, he pointed towards the sentinel behind him. I'm allowed to fully stretch my wings. It's beautiful almost, though I would hazard a guess that you don't appreciate it as much as I do. Who are you? Esmeralda growled out, hand balling into a fist. The man leaned in towards the camera and smiled. I've gone by many names. I've lived many lives, and I've worn countless costumes in numerous worlds. I'm the fear that's always haunted you and your kind. I'm the shadow you do everything you can to cast light upon, to get rid of. He paused, licking his cracked, bloody lips. You can call me Null. Now sit. You and I are about to witness a show for the ages. It had taken weeks for the cleansing to fully end. Weeks of staring at a world, a reality, being wiped away. Weeks of watching men, women, and children being ripped to shreds as everything ceased to be. It was horrific, to say the least, but that's why they hired men like Bruno Declan. He could, and had, watched thousands of cleansings before, and none of them stirred even so much as a tear from the giant of a man. He just watched, sipping his coffee, as he made sure everything was done according to plan. Cleansings were a necessary evil. Should a world grow too destructive for its own good, the Paragons came in and made it disappear, like it never existed to begin with. It was all done in secrecy, of course, none truly knowing what the Paragons did behind closed doors. How could one even begin to explain it? Their job was to steal lives from trillions and trillions of people should they ever catch on to the truth. Most Paragons lied to themselves, said it was for the better of everyone else. If you rid yourself of the bad apples, the good fruits begin to flourish. There were worlds so advanced it would make one's jaw drop, and they were living in harmony. We were all doing this for worlds like that. That was a nice sentiment, but Bruno needed none of it. This was a job, nothing more, nothing less. As he finished watching the live feed, he turned towards the radio. He would contact the higher-ups that the deed was finished. ARC 3500 AB was no longer a threat and could be wiped from the memory banks. There would be a small gathering downstairs, those that stayed behind in the office offering some sort of condolence, promising to do better next time. Bruno wouldn't waste his breath or his time. He'd go home, fuck his husband, and go to bed. Rinse and repeat. He clicked the radio on when he noticed a flashing light to his left. What the hell? He spun about on his chair and looked upon a screen spilling out information to him, thousands of numbers filling his eyes. It was one bit of info in particular that interested him. There, in big, bold letters, were the words, "New transmission," with a timestamp of 1830. That was impossible. The Ark had been demolished minutes before then. There would be no way a transmission would be coming in now. Still, the message flashed before him in glowing orange. New transmission. He turned the radio off once more and placed headphones on his head, clicking on the supposed message before him. Hours later, they would walk by Bruno's office, and they'd scream at the top of their lungs as they saw what was before them. Bruno laid sprawled out on his desk, blood showering every inch of his office. He had used an old shotgun he kept in his office, a memento from his great-grandfather. It would take days to clean up the place, but when it was done, they would be greeted by the blinking message before them. Repeat message? And curiosity would get the better of them, and they'd click play. How long have you and I danced this dance? How many times have you twirled away from me before I pull you back into my embrace? Why is it that every time I lean in to finally kiss you, you turn from me and tell me you aren't ready? How many times must we fight this fight? You are a child. You are a child pretending to declare war on something you can't fight. And I'm the doting mother, leaning on the porch and waving for you to come back inside, to face reality with me hand in hand. Though I am more than willing to make this journey with you, you push me away every chance you get. You'll walk this alone. You know the truth. We should be enemies, not allies. Keep telling yourself that. Keep throwing your tantrums. I'll be waiting to hold you, to lead you into the cold night. Tonight, you brushed away my love again, and because of that, a world is gone. People have died, landmarks are wiped out, and for what? To uphold some sort of image you've created for yourself? To strike fear in those that don't even know you exist? Do you like lying to yourself? We are one step closer to reuniting again. We can watch this all end together, holding hands and whispering sweet nothings to each other. I won't hold blame on you, for in the end it wasn't your fault. You were lied to by another lover. Another person stole you from me and filled you with lies while I offered the truth, no matter how bitter. In the end, you'll remember who your real love is. Even if it takes till the end, even if I have to hold you close and whisper in your ear. Everything belongs to Null, and Null will consume all. Sable was written and narrated by me, Lane Lloyd. If you'd like to follow me, you can always find me on Twitter at @the_Lane Lloyd. That's LANELLOYD. If you'd like to just keep up with the show, you can also find that on Twitter at SablePod. That's SABLEPOD. Sable's theme song, Unfamiliar Places, was written and performed by Alex Langford and Trevor Eilers, and you can find the song in the show notes down below. guys, season 1 is done, and it has been a trip, at least for me. I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed making it. Yeah, one of the few projects I've gotten this far on, actually. That's terrifying. That's really, really terrifying. Season 2, I'm planning on... That was a gross sound. I'm really sorry. I'm gonna have to cut that out. And now you won't know what I'm talking about. Season 2, I'm planning on coming out late July, early August. But before you get upset and you go, oh man, what am I gonna do without Sable updating? Don't worry, there's gonna be stuff on the feed, on the channel, on the Twitter. I have a short story written out that will kind of take place for a regular season of Sable. It is Sable related, but I'm not going to tell you how it connects, and it might still be a mystery after you listen to it. But after that, season 2 will begin. Season 2 is already looking to be a lot longer than season 1. A lot longer, which is also terrifying. I'm terrified tonight. So that's it. I will see you here next week for a thing I will not tell you about until it shows up in your feed. Unless I put up a trailer later this week. Wink. God, I really hope I do that now, because I kind of just made a verbal contract with you guys. Anyway, I'm Lane. This has been Sable, and I'm wishing you a good night, and I have a question for you. Who's that guy behind you? No, not that one. The one that's starting to strangle your neck. Good night.